Hello.
Yes, Ali, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Is Ali okay or Alison?
Yeah,
What do you prefer?
Allie's great.
Perfect, perfect. You are at the start of your day, right?
Yes. This is my second call of the day. Perks
Oh
of
wow,
being part of a global team. But yeah. So
always on call.
just getting started. No, truly. Truly. I normally ask people to give me until 7 a.m., but sometimes there's the 6 a.m. call in there, and I'm like, well, that's what we gotta do.
You sleeping with one eye open over there?
I guess I have a dog who really likes to be awake at 6:30, so it's kind of like sixes. What's 5:30 if
Okay.
you're up at 6:30, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that. Just having like a quick look at your bio with FootballCo, where you are now, Gotham
Okay.
FC, San Diego Wave, Angel City, Adidas and MLS, all great stuff to get stuck into and learn the pathway through that.
Yeah.
But first, Festa, who I can hear
Fester.
off camera. Yeah.
No,
What's
I'm so
what's the story
sorry.
with Festa? No, no, it's
Um
great. Yes.
he is so I am one of six kids. I have two sisters. Both my sisters and my mom. Oh, you are being so loud, sir. All had they all had kids by the time they were 25, and I don't have, probably won't have. So there was one point in our life where we were on a girls trip and every conversation was about like relationship with kids and partners and husbands, and I was like, man, I have nothing in common with these women. And then 3 weeks later I saw Fester, like a rescue had posted him, and I was like, oh no. It was like my dog mom uterus was singing to me. But I didn't grow up with dogs. I never wanted dogs. I had siblings, not dogs. And then I got him as a puppy, and he's now a senior old man with knee problems. So I carry him up and down to my fourth floor walk up multiple times a day. Like he gets whatever he wants. But yeah, he's the
Tough
guy.
life for Festa, getting carried
I
around.
want to live his life when I'm
Yeah,
come back someday.
a senior male with knee problems sounds remarkably like me at this point.
If it were
So
ankles,
I
it'd
can,
be me. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to Festa.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, so taking your schedule into account and the amount of calls that you field at all hours of the day, I really appreciate you sparing the
Oh,
time
for sure.
to chat with
For
me,
sure.
Ali.
For sure.
Uh, so we're here because, well, you'd come onto my radar recently, and
Yeah.
then
How did that
a
happen?
mutual connection. I think somebody had shared something of yours on LinkedIn, maybe, or you'd popped up
Okay.
somehow,
Okay.
and that put you on to. I was like, okay, this would be someone cool to speak to. And then I spoke with someone I believe you know, Aaron Durand.
He's the greatest human on planet
Oh yeah.
Earth.
So we spoke just recently for an episode, and on the back end of that, he listed you as somebody that he thought I'd have a great conversation with.
Yeah.
So it felt like the universe was talking there,
There
talking
we
to
go.
me rather. So
It's
here we
it's a
are.
small soccer world over here. I feel like everyone knows everyone. Like a lot of the football co team in the US hasn't worked in soccer, whether or not they've been fans. It's kind of a team coming together into the sport for the first time. And the like joke is that whoever the new CEO meets, they're like, oh, Allie Williams, I know her. And he's like, do you know everyone? I'm like, I've just been doing this a long time. I was a beat writer for Real Salt Lake in 2005. I'm just a glutton for punishment. I've just been in it.
Brilliant. So
So,
that sounds quite interesting. Was that your route in, beat writer for Real Salt Lake?
so that
How
was
far back does this go?
so, soccer is the love of my life. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, the actual Soccer City, USA. So like my mom grew up going to the Timbers games in the 70s, right? So it's just she didn't play. It's not, but within the city, there's just a love of the sport. And in my high school, like formative high school years, I played for a man named Clive Charles. who came up in the West Ham Academy and then went to play in the NASL, stayed in Portland. There's kind of a handful of them, but he's like your favorite soccer player's favorite soccer personality, like those who know. I actually talked to Heath Pierce about this quite a bit. And Aaron gave me a shirt that his dad had with Clive's face on the front. So I met Clive when I was 10, played for him in high school, but the program at University of Portland was one of the early like soccer powerhouses on both the men's and the women's side, and they were pulling a full stadium every weekend as well. So there was just something about Portland that just made soccer a thing. And played at college, did not have a great experience, left after my sophomore spring. And then that fall, I was like, this thing that I thought I loved, like made me absolutely miserable. I have no friends. What am I going to do? So I studied abroad in London, went to Old Trafford, and for 3 hours on the train from London to Manchester, I was just like giddy. I was just like smiling. I thought I was going to be doing homework or reading. None of that. I was just like, I'm going to Theater of Dreams. I'm going to Theater of Dreams. And that was just like the click on that. I was like, oh yeah, I love this thing. It's not pure harm to my soul. So when I came back from that, I started writing for our school newspaper. And so then when I was the sports editor of the newspaper, I got to assign my own beat. And I gave myself Real Salt Lake because it was a nice, solid dinner. And one of my best friends who had been the editor before me he also was a beat writer for it. So we just go shoot the shit in the press box and file stories. And it's like a really interesting time in the history of MLS because it's basically the before and after of Beck's coming. And Real Madrid that summer, was it the summer of, I don't even remember, but Real Madrid was playing in Salt Lake, and I went to their open training as a member of the media, and some like stupid Salt Lake sports writer like threw his mic in his face and he's like, are you gonna come play in Salt Lake? And I'm like, Bex isn't coming over, what are you talking about? And then literally a year later he was like, surprise, I'm going to Galaxy. But they were like playing in a college stadium. The grass was like so domed, the turf was for like runoff, that you couldn't see below the shins on the other side of the field. Like it was crazy. And there's some great players who were on that team. But it's such a specific time in MLS that like you had to be there to know what it was like. It's one of those like party tricks where I'll be at an MLS like all-star or something, just talking to people, and I'm like, yeah, I was there. And they're like, why? Well, real sicko hours over here. Why not is the question.
Still trying to figure that out, actually. Thanks for asking. I'm not sure what I was doing there. Could have been anywhere but.
I know. It's so funny.
So am I right in thinking there that in playing the game you became a little bit disenfranchised with it, but the covering of it showed you another side of how to enjoy it?
Yeah. I mean, I was a kid with hubris, and I was going to be the first Olympian who played soccer and basketball. And there were moments in life where I was like, directionally, this might be possible for me. And then there were moments where I was like, I am a step behind the people who are going to go do that. Like the first time where I was like, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. It was like late 90s. I was playing ODP, which is a very specific like US format, on the regional team. We were at a Thanksgiving tournament, and the country was like divided up into 4 regions, and then the 4 regions come together and play each other over Thanksgiving. And I was playing Region 1, which is the Northeast. And there was this girl who was I was a center back. She was making my life a living hell. She was the only player I could never solve. Like, she was faster than me. She thought smarter than me. She was super unpredictable. I couldn't find patterns. I was like, am I bad at this? Like, I'm looking around. I think I'm one of the 8 best center backs in the country right now because I'm on the field with the other there's 4 teams and there's 2 on every team. Like, what is happening? And 3 months later, 6 months later, that player capped with the national team, and it was Heather O'Reilly. And when she was coming onto the field, the announcer was like, Heather O'Reilly, she's so fast. She's a game changer. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not that far off, but also she is that far ahead. I told her that story recently, and she was like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, you're fine. We're good here.
Sorry, I did that.
We're good here. We're all good here. You weren't the only one, but you were the first.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a kind of a trail of crushed egos in her wake, going through those years.
Honestly,
and
I'm
broken
honored to
hearts.
rub shoulders with them.
So does this new interest not new interest, but that new avenue at that time then inform your study path? Where are you at that point when you start?
Yeah,
So you're a high school. Was it high school newspaper you said?
It was college.
College paper, sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up in Portland, the other thing that's kind of in the water is Nike. So I was raised a marketer. I can tell you the taglines of TV shows from the 90s. Like, my brother and I, the TV would go on commercial and we would tune up because I'm like, ooh, commercials. And we'd like guess what brand and try and predict things that were happening. Like, I've just always been a marketer. And then you're in the shadows of Nike, who do that better than anyone. So all I wanted after my illustrious playing career was to work at Nike. So I was building a career so that I would get back to Portland and work at Nike at some point. So I studied PR, moved to New York with an unpaid internship and a dream in the financial crisis of the 2000s. Slept on my cousin's couch for 8 months. And yeah, so it wasn't ever like, I want to work in the game of soccer. I thought I wanted to work in sports and tell stories as it relates to sports. But every time, like, my first role in my career where I was like 100% working in soccer was in 2011, 2012. I went and worked at US Youth Soccer. Again, real sicko soccer hours there. Spent like 14 months in Frisco, Texas, which is north of Dallas. And I was like, this is not my jam. But basically since then, whenever I've like thought to leave the game or work more broad in sport or go back to like my CPG agency roots, the game just like sucks me back in. So I've stopped fighting it for a while. My line now is like, well, at least till the other side of the 26-27 World Cup, probably the other side of 31. I'm just in soccer. We'll talk about it after that. We're good here for a while.
Stockholm syndrome. You're in the system now. That's it.
But I really do just love it. Like, it really does just make me happy. I think I've turned off so much of my competitive streak that like, and also it's hard to get mad at losing when you're a United fan since 2013. Like, it's just been beaten out of you over the last 11 years. If I'm sad every time my team loses, then I'm just sad.
Welcome to my entire life.
Yeah. Well, I saw a stat that we lost more Premier League games this year than Sir Alex lost in his entire career. He averaged 1.6 losses a season over his entire managerial stint, which is nuts. So I've lost my competitive streaks because it used to be very, very big. I would cheat when I was babysitting playing Monopoly because I had to win at all costs. My siblings
really
and I were
a lesson.
Yeah, totally.
We're
really
life,
bad
kid.
Losers. We are really bad losers in my household. So having turned that off, like, I'm just able to enjoy it. I've always said I would rather see a well-played game than see my team win. I just like, I don't know, the like artistry and the orchestra of like all of these people moving, and you don't call timeouts and you don't draw up plays. It's like, the responsibility is on you to see and to solve and to set your teammates up and to like take the risks and cover for the weakness. Like, love that part of it. So I've been able to stay a fan. I'm somehow in life become good friends with a lot of the like media folks who talk about the sport in this country. And I was out at dinner with Alexis Guerreros of Cooligans and of Glasso Network and Morning Footy. And I was like saying something, and I'm sure I had like this goofy smile on my face. And he was like, "Huh, you're still a fan." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, I got to watch games now and like think about what I'm going to say about them." And I get to watch and just be like, is there a story I can uncover? But like mostly I'm just watching because it's what I do. I plan my weekend days around like what games are on, when can I take my dog for a walk, what time's lunch. Yeah, I just love it.
That's twice you've mentioned storytelling there
Mm-hmm.
earlier on, and just there where you're watching a game, not necessarily for the tactical element of it, but more what's going on in the background of that. Where does the storytelling come in for you before that? I guess where's the interest in telling stories, and why through sport? I mean, I guess sport is the logical choice given your interest in it, but yeah, why is storytelling important to you?
Yeah, I've actually never thought about the why and the when of storytelling. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. But it's just always been something that I've been drawn to, like communicating in a way that it can't be misunderstood, um, and finding the right like questions or the right pathways to connect with people. I think, yeah, I grew up with a little bit of like otherness around like the culture in which I was raised. I was raised Mormon, wasn't friends with any Mormons. And so there was like so much perceived difference between me and someone else that it felt like stories and words is like a way to remove the otherness. And I think sports at its best is actually something that can remove otherness really, really beautifully or tribalistically reinforce it. Um, so yeah, I think it's probably somewhere in there. And I've just found myself in storytelling roles where whatever that is. And whether it's like at Adidas, what story do I tell about the jerseys, the cleats, this club, these launches, my club days, like what is the name of this team? And then what story does that name need to tell? And now working in media for the first time, like the volume of stories, I like can't even keep up. Normally I have more story ideas than can be done. And now I can't keep up with the amount of stories of our output because that's the reality of a media org. And that's honestly been one of the biggest learning curves for me. I'm like, oh, we move very fast. We say a lot of things a lot because we're a media entity and we have to. So yeah, that's kind of been the whiplash of this role where I've always, found ways in. I want to bring people into the game. And I've said this in more meetings that I can count, and people are probably annoyed, but once the game gets you, the game keeps you. So yeah, I just want to bring people in, and I think stories is the thing that can do that. And especially when you are in this country marketing a sport with lesser perceptions, or you're trying to get people interested in MLS. You can't necessarily sell that it's the best on-field product globally. But I do think there are some environments that stand up to some of the best globally. I think there are like club stories, there's players, like there's so much in there that if you are a snobby Eurocentric football fan, that you can be like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's like the yellow wall. I get it. Or if you are a snobby American who only likes things that are the best, you can say, oh, they're the best at that one thing. Cool. Or you like underdogs. So I think there's a connection that can be made through telling those stories, and kind of a perception that can be crafted.
It's really, well, first of all, yeah, I completely agree with your point about the game. Once it's got you, it's got you. There's been a few times during my life as a supporter that the game has kind of worn me down a little bit, and I've tried to switch off.
Yeah.
And it's not long before you kind of, I'll say not long, yeah, hours before you just kind of, your phone comes out your pocket and you think, I'll just check the scores. My team's not even playing, but how are Coventry getting on against whoever? Or, it's just looking at some obscure game in Albania to see if there's just to see what's going on.
What do I need to turn on? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, is there anything going on out there? Any interesting score lines or team names that I've never heard of? Oh, there's an Everton in Chile. Wicked. It's just the game gets you, and you might think you're out, but all you do is just move to another part of it, and that's all this is as well. I've watched less football this season than I ever have, but like every week, I'm speaking with someone in the football landscape to learn more about them, because I can't get rid of the game, basically.
I get it.
That's Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, we're in it. Going back to the using the where you were othered, just briefly. So was the storytelling there a way for you to dismantle barriers in a way where like you couldn't necessarily do that in person for whatever reason, but your words gave you a conduit into something?
Yeah. And writing has always been, I figure out how I'm feeling when I either say it or write it. So there's also something like super cathartic within myself that it's like a release, and this like beautiful point of clarification where I'm like, oh, that's how I actually feel about this, or that's what I wanted to communicate here. But yeah, I mean, the best stories are ones that people can map themselves onto. And I don't think there are many stories that everyone can do that to. But there's kernels of connection that can be crafted. Yeah, just kind of bringing people in layer by layer. When I'm being cynical, I'll say I don't tell the truth. I tell true stories. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not, but it's just crafting an entryway.
Do you think that you see things more deeply or in a more through a more romantic lens because of your way with words? Does it change the way you look at things versus being an illustrator, maybe?
I think I am constantly at war with romance and pragmatism. So yes, I think my most natural state is to be like, what is possible? Like, let's find the beauty in this. Let's find the romance in this. Let's explore that. But then if that then has to have a takedown into execution, then I'm always like, oh no, I got to do that. So let's rein this thing back in. Let's not, because there's not enough time to be able to do the things that I thought I could do. So yeah, I think there's a like internal battle that goes on, but I do think my like most pure like version of myself is a very like spiritual, romantic, like beyond what makes sense, connective tissue through all things. And I do think the universe scriptwriters in the game of soccer, like obviously they're really into romance, or Ali Krieger wouldn't have won her only NWSL championship on 11/11 wearing 11 after a life upheaval with her best friend on the field. Like, it just like, there's romance. Like, how do you not see it? It's just there. You may as well celebrate it and lean in.
Are you Cancerian?
I am Taurus Sun, Cancer Moon, Gemini rising.
Okay.
There's a lot in that. There's a lot
going on in there. Complicated makeup there. But yeah, as you were describing that, I was hearing a lot of myself there, and I'm thinking, yeah, that is kind of right. yeah, she must be Cancerian. She feels all the feels and looking for the meaning and everything and neat bookmarks. And I've had one myself recently this week. I've been painting in the garden.
Okay.
This a structure that slight segue. This happens. So my brother's very kindly built a outdoor work surface so we can cook and
cool.
Enjoy the garden more in the summer. When it's here, it's gone missing again for a few days.
I'm from Portland. Summer was like a 2-month joyous season. It's all good.
Yeah, you got to get out quick. Make sure you got a clean pair of shorts ready because it goes just like that. So I'm in the garden at the weekend painting this thing, and it's I'm just kind of watching there's a little bit of nature going on in the garden, the squirrel going across the back fence, there's some birds flying around, all that kind of thing. And my mind went back 3 years when I was in my mum's garden painting a load more wood that my brother had chopped up for her garden fence. And it was a different time of life then, like a more difficult time. I was staying at my mum's for a very testing period. And the painting in the garden in the sun, painting specifically a load of wood that my brother's chopped up and put together, provided a very convenient bookmark. And I love the neatness of that and how the painting of that is like a conduit for time travel almost.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're sitting there doing it, in the middle of May 2024, but you're kind of smiling warmly at the nostalgia of 2021 and how far life has moved and all this kind of thing. And most people would just, I guess, paint the wood, get it done and get on with it. But I'm sitting there like, what's the message? What's the message? Like, is there a message in here? What will I be doing in 3 years' time in May? What will I be painting in 3 years' time in May? And all this kind of stuff. You may
as well turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. Why not? It's all we got.
Yeah. Well, that's a soundbite if ever I've heard one. We'll lead with that one, Ali. We'll lead with that one.
That's hilarious.
So Nike was on your radar to kind of end up back at, and it seems like you've been everywhere but. So what did that route look like out of college?
So I moved to New York, was in I was at a PR agency, but it was during the time where brands were getting onto Facebook for the first time and Twitter. So my role turned very quickly into what is now like a social media community manager and copywriter. So I was building editorial calendars for my main client was like Hasbro board games. So like, what does Trivial Pursuit say on Twitter? What does Cranium say on Facebook? Like, it was honestly a really fun job. Like, I'd be reading Mental Floss, trying to come up with things. Trying to find original content for Trivial Pursuit is a real pursuit. So I started there. You are being so loud, Fester. What are you doing? Will you go lay down, please? Go lay down. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry.
No, it's good.
So real.
It's adding a lovely texture to it. It's brilliant.
This is now an audio documentary with environmental sounds, and I'm going to keep squeaking my chair and having my dog snore. Okay, so with the stint in at USU Soccer, I actually went back to the same agency I'd left in New York, and at that point had Johnson & Johnson as a client, so was able to activate their 2014 World Cup sponsorship and built a game where the player was the goalie and allergens were being shot at you, and you would move and try and block the allergens because that's what Zyrtec does for you. It was the most ridiculous. It's hilarious, but it was also like a really funly addicted game. And so from there, I put myself on a 2 to 10 year plan to move back to Portland, and literally on the eve of 2 years, I had applied for a role with Adidas in New York because there wasn't a relevant role open in Nike, and I've always been a bit of a contrarian. So I was like, let's go to Adidas and see what that's like. They had filled the role in New York, but Yeah, they had filled the role in New York, but they said we have a soccer role in Portland. So found myself moving to Portland in 2015. So moving back home. And for about a year was leading social strategy in North America for Adidas Soccer. But during that time is when the brand was renegotiating its contract with Major League Soccer, and taking what was now quite outdated, and turning it into a contract, very much looking forward. And so I was able to be in some of those rooms, influence some of those points, and written into that contract was a new role within the Adidas Soccer business unit, which is one that I ended up stepping into, which was leading strategy and brand for Major League Soccer, within Adidas Soccer. So it was very much a transactional relationship up until that point. Like, we help you design jerseys, we make sure we have the right LED boards for you, and we get the right space that we are contractually given. But the spirit of the new deal, which is not a small amount of dollars that was exchanged hands from one to the other, was to kind of take the tailwinds that MLS had at the time. Adidas had never been more popular. We had just overtaken Jordan for the #2 footwear brand, and that was something that people didn't think that they would see in their lifetime. It was Nike 1, Jordan 2, Adidas as an also ran 3, with Skechers on its tail. So 2015, with Shell Toes and with Yeezy, and a bunch of other just like smart things, Adidas takes over #2. We had a ton of cultural cachet, and really kind of where it's sitting now, actually, with the samba and the terrace, like bloke core of it all. But yeah, so it was like, how can we supercharge this thing? Because we have a shared interest in making money off this league, and selling jerseys and building a new generation of fans. Take what these fans look like and reflect back to them what they care about, what they want to see, and in so doing, bring more people in. So it was a really fun challenge. And it was at a time where LAFC was coming into the league, Atlanta was coming into the league, Austin was coming in a few years later, and some of those expansion clubs just really changed what was possible. The way that they built community, the way that Arthur Blank, invested in Atlanta into a new stadium that he built equally for football and football and soccer. So he met his wife on the sidelines of a youth soccer game. So there was just new leadership and energy and voices in the room, that gave MLS this like catalytic energy, that was super fun, and a little bit of a transition from the owners who were first part of the NASL, who then were owners within MLS, like the Robert Krafts and the Lamar Hunts of the world. They, in the 2000s, before Bex came, single-handedly saved the league, held on to organizations, kept certain clubs from going under so that the league could find a solution to move forward. About 10 years in, the league was not in a good spot. So these kind of American giants who had gotten the league to where it was, 2015-16 was MLS 2.0 is how it's often referred to. So there's just a lot of fun energy. Drake was wearing Juventus jerseys, and we don't need to talk about Drake too much right now at this point in time, but there was just some like fun. Soccer had a cool factor and a legitimacy in this country that it hadn't before, from like a culture influence perspective. So yeah, it was honestly great. And I got a really interesting view of both like being on the brand side, and understanding like a retail calendar, which is crazy. Like you're operating in 3 seasons at once. You have 3 parallel timelines running at all times, and it's like it's its own learning curve. But being able to do that against the backdrop of feeling like what I was doing, the people I was bringing in to tell stories, the visuals that we were making really were changing the way soccer looks and feels. One of the like main parts of that new deal was this group called the Creator Network. And it was kind of written into the contract with very broad strokes, but it was like one of my main remits was like, figure this out, make it happen. So with the support of the team that I had at Adidas, and then some folks in the league office who have since all moved on, but Eric Gonsalves, Karen Travieso, and then Demi Omfroy, we just like figured this thing out and brought it to market in a really meaningful way. And the way that we ended up doing it was basically having a creator per team. So we launched it with LA and New York. We had an LAFC creator, an LA Galaxy creator, a New York Red Bull creator, and an NYCFC creator. And they were mostly, actually from the jump, they were all photographers. But when we like set out building the like dream, oh my gosh, I have the guiding principles doc for this thing. But when we sat in a conference room being like, what is the point of this? And we said, Jordan Feinauer from the league was in the room. It was like, we want to change the way soccer looks and feels in this country. Easy peasy. But when you looked at the soccer landscape, right? But when you look at the soccer landscape in the US, it's Nike, it's Adidas, it's US Soccer, and it's MLS. And NWSL didn't really have the cultural foothold that it does now. It was 3 years old at the time and was V3 of a failed league endeavor. So yeah, it was kind of like, well, if not us, who? Someone's deciding what it looks like. Let's be the ones doing it. So I guess the hubris comes back in, a little bit of the romance. So it was just it was a big lift. There was a lot of work. But it was also just a really beautiful creative community that came together. And so many of these people are still in the game telling stories. There's 2 of the guys, one who was LAFC, one who's Kansas City. They now have their own agency, and they were the lead creative behind MLS following Messi last year. So Devin. Very much. But yeah.
Devin. Yeah. Oh, we had him on. I had him on here last year. What a guy.
Yeah. He's the best. Yeah. And we were one of his first like paying soccer photography gigs. And the way that we had set it up is like these photographers, these videographers, these artists, they got enough of a stipend from being a creator with MLS and Adidas that they had some security, they got to take some swings, they got to try things. And it was just a really cool collective of people. So yeah, Casey and Devin, there's 2 guys, Ethan and Matt Stith, who now have an agency in New York called Stade, and they have a football case study on Instagram. Go check it out, where they just are like so purely passionate about chronicling the game, archiving the game, making sure that we have a lens and a point of view on what's happening in the game today for the generations to come. Demi, who I name checked, is an full-time artist. He's like doing residencies places and like modeling for like going to fashion weeks. And I'm like, we used to sit and write decks together. But like Jared, Godspeed Good Sir, was like the first one that decided to come on that I was like, oh, this thing might be legit. Like he's done some things. Like Jared was the one who brands and clubs were flying around the world being like, shoot this, capture that for us. And I was like, and he wants to be the LA Galaxy photographer in this situation. So there was some comfort in knowing that was happening. But yeah, it was just like a really cool, special time where it wasn't big enough to feel corporate. We didn't have to like answer to anyone other than like obviously I was very specific about like, this is what needs to happen for footwear. This is what needs to happen for jerseys. And there obviously is a commercial bend to it, but there was a lot of fun that was had. Like our retreats were awesome. It was like a really good time with tons of talent, and people that I still keep in contact with, I still work with. And because a lot of them weren't soccer shooters first, there's something really interesting about the way that they exist within a stadium. There's this guy out of Seattle, Connor, and he, like, the way he captures a light in a stadium is unlike anything I've seen. And it's just so, like, I can know if a picture is Connor's because of the composition. This woman out of Atlanta, she looks at it differently. She's a streetwear, like, photographer. So she's gonna look at things differently. It's just a really fun way to, one, refresh the way that I look at the game, but two, make it more accessible for new people coming in. Because if they weren't, the insiders of the sport, it can be daunting to get into it. And I think the way that they were able to capture it made it feel like more people could fit. So yeah, it was. And then once I was at Adidas, I was like, you know what? I like it here. I'm not looking to the other, like, stripes over checks. So yeah, so I mean, I have both in my shoe collection. But I, like, default day to day, I certainly wear more Nike or Adidas than Nikes or J's.
It sounds like there was some serious startup vibes, which is interesting to kind of to picture amongst a well-established sporting behemoth like Adidas, right?
I have found startup vibes wherever I am. It's what I'm in now.
Are you the vibe? Are you taking the vibe?
I don't know. Or I'm just like a glutton for punishment, because like my agency life in New York, I was building the social digital practice along with one or two within an established PR agency. Adidas, we were building out a new, like, org, a new point of view, a new workflow. For MLS, it was outside of like the normal global reporting structure. I got to take risks. So yeah, super startup-y vibes. Then I literally left Adidas and went to a startup. And then shortly thereafter was at Angel City, the definition of startup vibes. San Diego, startup vibes. Now with FootballCo, Goal.com is the destination for global football news, but we have had boots on the ground in the US since January. And I was like number 4 or 5 on that team. So yeah, it's a very mature global business that in the US we are putting together piece by piece. So again, startup vibes, where I'm like mapping org charts and like figuring out what the jobs to be done are and what jobs we need to hire for and what the right talent is. Yeah, it is. I don't know why. It's startup vibes everywhere I go. It's probably why I have so much gray hair.
It's like it's almost like you're they know who to get in to get the job done, right? They're like, wait, the gun for hire. The gun for hire. Where's Ali?
And like that has honestly, my last 4 roles, I left just like the definition of burnout, where like it took me months to recover. So that's also something I am being super aware of now, knowing that this is as big of a role as I'll have, and as big of an org as I'll build, obviously alongside incredible people, but like our commercial aspirations are high, and the roadmap to a 2026, 28, 31, like the wheels are greased, let's go. So it's also something that I am being super intentional with. Like I can't turn into a Skeletor. I can't devolve into things that coping and lack of balance that I've done before. So there's a lot of lessons learned in that, where how do I protect myself from myself?
What are you doing differently now to in those other roles through your lens?
I mean, I have an hour blocked every day for lunch, which is Honestly,
That's a
it's so
start.
silly. No, truly. My therapist is like, what did you have for breakfast? Did you eat lunch? I'm like, you know what? These are really good questions because I will go. Reminds me, I forgot to eat breakfast this morning. I don't know. In a normal day, I'm like, food is life. On a work day where there's a lot to do, I can just like genuinely forget it. I also, I think, have been more comfortable in saying what I don't know. Like, this is the first time I'm working in media, and there is a learning curve. There is so much I don't know. So instead of like going into myself feeling like I need to figure it out before I get found out, like operating from a lot of fear and insecurity, I'm trying to just be like, I don't know what that acronym is. I don't know. Teach me how to look at this thing. What's your thought process in building this package, evaluating this RFP, that sort of thing. I have a lot of like transferable skills, but I've never used it in this industry. This is like my 18 millionth new industry. But it is the first time where I feel like I'm entering with a confidence in unknowing. So that's been a huge shift. And then just like it's something I've been working on for the last several years, right? So there's just a lot more tools in my tool belt. I've been with the same therapist since February of 21, when I started going to her in like a moment of deep crisis. So we've just like worked on stuff, and there's been more crises, but like a ton of growth. Yeah, and just understanding and being upfront. Like, people try and put meetings on my calendar Monday at noon, and I'm like, I'm in therapy. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'll hit you before, I'll get you on the other side, but like that's therapy. This is my lunch break. Like, I'm
Ideally for
taking
them
Friday
before,
off.
depending on how it goes, right?
Yeah, I know. I do on Mondays. Therapy is noon to 1. Lunch break every day is 1 to 2. So I do have some like built in. Do I need to recover, or do I need to like literally just get right back on email, or delivering? And therapy can go both ways. Sometimes you're you're in the deep end, and sometimes you're just, in a lazy river. You can't do it all the time. But
Either
yeah,
way, you come
I
out
think that's fun.
hungry, from my experience. Either way.
So
Am I right?
PB&J PB&J is the world's best self. I'm like, do I have a 6 a.m. meeting? Is it at 8? Cool. Last week I was on with the NWSL team in the UK and in the US,
Oh,
and I
Morgan?
looked down. Yeah, Morgan,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then the team that works with her. Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah, she's
But
great.
I look down and I just have a huge like glop of jelly. I'm like, well,
That is
breakfast.
what it is.
Yeah.
I'm up here,
Came out.
guys.
It's all good.
Focus up
It's all
here.
good.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
It's
What are you
just
doing? Sorry to cut you off.
no, go.
But like outside of that, I mean, it's great that you're blacking out that time, although it's still not a lot. So what do you do on the rare times that you are off the clock, rather? How are you leveling out? Are you still engaging in the game outside of working hours? Are you able to enjoy it
I
that way?
watch it, and it's fun for me. I don't play anymore. I had a fairly traumatic ankle injury. When I quit playing in college, I had to have both my ankles reconstructed. And so, but like I was young, I could get back into playing. I played a ton when I lived in New York in my younger years. Co-ed soccer every weekend with the kitten mittens. Shout out. But since I dislocated, fractured, did some bad things to my ankle in 2018, it like hasn't. I don't like walking hurts. Like, I don't have good walking range of motion, so playing is just off the table. So honestly, I like love puzzles. I love crocheting. I love embroidery. I'm like, is it something meditative I can do with my hands? Cool. I take my dog on walks. I think that's why I love, like, I've lived in Portland, I've lived in LA, and I've lived in New York as an adult. And New York is just the place where I feel like I'm my best self. And I feel like it's easiest to be nicest to myself. And part of that's just because, like, going out and walking is really good for, like, my mental health. And it's really fun to do in New York. It's a very walking culture. You can walk, you can find good food, you can be surrounded by the energy of people. My dog then loses weight because he's fat, which is bad for his bad knees. So yeah, there's, like, things outside that certainly help. And then I've just tried to, like, I had to destigmatize it within myself. Of, like, it took me a long time to be able to say, like, I am on Prozac. And then, like, there was a time where I had to change up all of the medications. And actually at the end, right at the start of the San Diego Wave 2022 season, I was getting on an entirely new regimen of medicine. And I was like, this is a terrible time to be doing this. But it also was, like, almost quite literally life and death for me. So I was like, well, we're doing it. So trying
How
to
do you navigate
be
that with because I fall apart if I've got something going on in my personal life. I'm like, I can't even bear the thought of going to work today. But you've obviously got a bit of a relentless work ethic.
or I'm just stupid. There was a Tuesday where I called my mom, and it was San Diego was about to host Angel City at Torero, and it was within Challenge Cup. It wasn't the regular season home opener yet. It was like 3 weeks prior. And I was just, like, in the worst place. And I called my mom on Tuesday and I said, what are you doing this weekend? And I just started sobbing. And she's like, am I coming to San Diego? And I was like, yeah.
Think so. Yeah.
But you're just being so loud.
There he is.
There he is. So yeah, I think, like, I haven't been able to do it on my own. And I think kind of the global powers of 2020, 2021, today, like, the world is too big and dark. Like, I literally can't do it on my own. So I've had to call in for help, as, like, the stakes have raised in my own life and the stakes have raised in the world writ large. Part of that's, I think, getting older. Part of that's just the state of the world. Pandemic was fairly unprecedented. Yeah, so just, like, one, talking about it, like, trying to destigmatize it within my own self, and making other people feel comfortable with it. And then two, I've had to ask for help. So I was, like, a super independent kid. Like, I went to every my parents went to one out of town soccer tournament my entire playing career. So, like, every weekend I was either, like, with someone else's mom and dad, or, traveling just with my team. I started working when I was 15. I moved out of my parents' house when I was in high school. When they moved to Utah, I stayed in Portland and lived with my best friend. Like, I've just put myself through college. Like, I've just been annoyingly independent, and I have not been able to be in my last few years, which is tough, but also has, like, saved me from myself in a lot of ways.
Do you find a sense of liberation in being more open with this kind of thing? And does it enable you to produce better work than previously, would you say?
Better work, I don't know, because I did some really good work at San Diego, and those were literally the darkest days of my life. Like, sometimes I think about those times and I, like, have to laugh because it was so bad. So I can't say that necessarily the work is better, because I had really good work out of really dark times. But I'll be able to do the work longer. It's more sustainable, which is better. And yeah, there's just, like, a lightness and a brightness to it, right? Where, oh God, yeah. So I'm better. I don't know if the work's better, but
That's
human,
the important thing,
which is nice.
The work can come, right? If you're better, there's always an opportunity. There's always a possibility that the work will be better. But we need you to be better first. It starts there. we'll work back
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah. If I had to like go into those dark times and name San Diego Wave FC, San Diego Wave FC with that crest and that color palette in 6 weeks time, start to finish, then like maybe I'd do that again. I don't know. I don't have to because I've already done it. But yeah, there's been some wild rides in this thing.
What is it? Do you look back and kind of reflect on like the fingerprints that you've left across the landscape there at all, or are you very much that's done and
I'm
now
not
I'm
good
doing
at
this?
celebrating things. But there was a moment I left San Diego Wave in May, June of 22. September, I was back in San Diego attending as a fan the San Diego Wave Angel City game at Snapdragon in front of 32,000 people. And I actually was talking to Servando, Mr. Alex Morgan, and he helped me just be like, do you see that you were part of both of these things happening here today? And there are some moments like that where I get to be like, oh yeah, I think more I like to be able to say I was there, like as a friend, as an auntie, as a sister, like I just want to be there. And one of the like great privileges of my life in work is I've been able to be there for a lot of really cool moments. And yeah, I guess if I can peel back some of the forward looking nature of what I do, of like what's next, and look back and start to celebrate, like, oh, when I joined San Diego Wave FC, it was named the San Diego NWSL Project. And I joined in August, and we launched a name in September.
Incomers, no doubt.
And I know. I was hired in August. We launched the name in September. We launched the crest in December. We were on the field, sold out in February. And in the meantime, we announced Abby Dahlkemper, Alex Morgan, Sophia Jakobsen, like Kaylin Shared, like so many, like it was crazy.
There's so much responsibility that comes with that because you're building something that becomes a part of people's day to day. And although it's in a booklet that says the San Diego Wave NWSL project when you first get there, it then becomes tradition before long. And
yeah,
like, stories in people's households and memories in people's households and parts of people. It starts with you in this manual. And I mean, yeah, it's incredible really that you're one of the architects of what people will then be enjoying for decades afterwards.
Well, and I think one of is an important part there. I was able to think and work with a lot of really smart people, but yeah, like being kind of the common thread along that, and like having gone through the process at Angel City, and then doing it again a year later, further back in the launch process. I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew I would never do it again. But it's like, when I'm 80 sitting on the porch with my niece and nephew's grandkids, I'll be like, back in my day. So
and then the phone rings and there's a new franchise. Hello, is Ali there, please? What do you do?
I'll consult. I'll consult. That's it. All right.
Ali, I'm really conscious of the time and I know you've got loads on. So I'll thank you for your time this morning and for bringing Festa to the show. That's been a real treat.
I will apologize for this
don't.
squish face. Golly.
No, please do not at all.
Mr.
I'm
Mo.
glad he was here.
He's like, can I go get a treat now? I'm like, no, you don't get that for another 2 hours.
He's pulling all the best moves, though. He's pulling all the moves out to get one. Bless him.
He is. All right.
Ali, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Oh,
yeah,
you too. Well, I hope you enjoy your lunch break today. Don't forget to eat breakfast.
Perfect.
And I'll speak to you on the other side. Take it easy. Bye-bye.